Happy Eastertide and Ascension Week, and welcome to this week's edition of Music of Hope and Comfort. Thanks for finding us and watching and listening. This week we will be combining several Easter pieces and several Ascension pieces, as Ascension Day is this week. It's 40 days after Easter. Ascension is a minor Christian holiday and still celebrated on Ascension Day in many churches with a special service. As you probably remember, the ascension of Jesus into heaven is described in the book of Acts in the first chapter. Painters for centuries have depicted this scene in their artwork. We are celebrating Jesus' ascension in worship this Sunday. This week, I am very happy to welcome back to the program our organist, friend, and colleague, Paul Frazee. Welcome back from vacation. I'm Carl Brunn, the organist here at St. John's Lutheran Church in downtown Lombard, the home of our wonderful 40-year-old Zimmer Tracker pipe organ. We are joined again behind the scenes by videographers and film editors Mark Kornitz and Rick Schultz. This week I will start our program with some joyous Easter music and, of course, some stories. I will be beginning our program with the Easter hymn, Christ the Lord is Risen Today, Alleluia, number 463. This piece has an ancient text written by a person with an interesting name, Wippo of Burgundy, who lived back around the year 1000. Very little is known about Wippo, other than he wrote several books and is remembered as the chaplain to the Holy Roman Emperor Conrad II and the tutor for his son, Henry III. He has two hymns that are still in our hymnal, this one and number 460, Christians to the Paschal Victim. The text is matched to the tune Landfair, which is in most denominational hymnals. It was written by Robert Williams, who lived between 1781 and 1821. He lived on the island of Anglesey, the largest island in Wales. He was blind, he was a basket weaver, and had great innate musical skills and ability. He sang hymns at public occasions and was a composer of hymn tunes. This lovely and famous hymn tune was supposedly written in 1817. The familiar tune is Mr. Williams' only hymn tune in our hymnal. The arrangement I will be playing was compiled by Alfred Fedek. He is a very active composer, organist, and choir director, presently at Westminster Presbyterian Church in Albany, New York. He has over 50 organ pieces or collections published, including this piece. Our senior choir ensemble will be singing one of his anthems on Pentecost Sunday in a little over a week. Enjoy. next selection I will be playing is number 473, Our Paschal Lamb That Sets Us Free. This is one of the new hymn texts and tunes in our hymnal that our congregation loves. I also love this hymn and text both very much. The text was written by Martin Franzen, who lived from 1907 to 1976, one of the most prominent Lutheran theologians and scholars for the 20th century. He was the son of a Lutheran pastor from Minnesota and taught for many years at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, and wrote 7 theological books, all published by Concordia. He also wrote the text to 10 hymns, 6 of which are in our LSB hymnal. Perhaps the other more famous hymn text in our hymnal is number 573, Thy Strong Word. This particular tune, was written by Walter Pels, whose music has frequently been played on the series. Walter Pels is a graduate of Concordia Teachers College in River Forest and taught at Bethany College in Lindsborg, Kansas for many years. Region 3, the name of the tune, is kind of an unusual name. Walter Pels wrote the tune and it was published without a name. It was later named Region 3 after a concertato on that tune that was commissioned for the 1966 meeting in St. Louis of the Region 3, the Midwestern states, of the Association of Lutheran Church Musicians. This is a pan-Lutheran group of church musicians that Paul and Daniil and I belong to. Thus, Region 3, an unusual hymn tune name, and that's the way it is. He also wrote, not only did he write the tune, he also wrote the arrangement of the tune written by Walter Pels. I know that can be a little bit confusing. Next, Paul will play an arrangement of the Ascension hymn number 491, Up Through Endless Ranks of Angels, composed by David Poley. Mr. Poley is, or was, the director of music at Our Redeemer Lutheran Church in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin for many years. He is also composer of 6 Corel Preludes in the Hymn Prelude series published by CPH. The first verse of the text of this grand hymn by Jaroslav Vida reads, Up through endless ranks of angels, cries of triumph in his ears, to his heavenly throne ascending, having vanquished all their fears, Christ looks down upon his faithful, leaving them in happy tears. Next, I will play an Ascension Corel Prelude on hymn number 495, Look Ye Saints, the Sight is Glorious. This text is based on the grand text written by Thomas Kelly. He was born in Dublin in 1769, the son of an Irish court judge. He intended to follow his father's footsteps, but underwent a very marked spiritual change in 1793 at the age of 24. There soon after, for some reason, probably because he was an unorthodox preacher, he was prohibited from leading worship services in the established church. I found a quote about Mr. Kelly on the internet from a book published in 1869. It reads, Mr. Kelly was a man of great and varied learning, skilled in the Oriental languages, and an excellent Bible scholar. He was possessed also by musical talent and composed and published works that were received in favor, consisting of music adapted to every form of meter in his hymnals. Naturally, he had an amiable disposition and thorough in his Christian piety. Mr. Kelly became a good friend of good men and women, and the advocate of every worthy, benevolent, and religious cause. He was admired alike for his zeal and his humility, and his liberality found ample scope in Ireland, especially during the years of the famine. Mr. Kelly wrote 765 hymns, which were published or republished in about 12 different hymnals of various editions. And most of his hymns were hymns of praise, as is this one. We have 4 hymns in our hymnal, including a favorite that you may well know, number 532, The Head That Once Was Crowned with Thorns. The hymn for today, though, I would like to read the first verse of the text. It reads, Look ye saints, the sight is glorious. See the man of sorrows now. From the fight return victorious. Every knee to him shall bow. Crown him, crown him. We sing that 6 times, and it ends with, crown become the victor's brow. Crowns become the victor's brow. The tune, which I love, is a Welsh tune named Bryn Calfaria, which means in English, Mount of Calvary. It was written by the Welsh composer William Owen back around 1853. The tune is reputed to have been written originally on a piece of slate while Mr. Owen was on his way to work at a quarry in North Wales. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Corel Preludes based on snippets of the melody rather than on the entire melody. This is such a Corel Prelude. The arrangement I will be playing was composed by Robert J. Powell, who writes music in a conservative, neo-romantic style, which I love. His pieces that he writes are practical and useful. It's particularly good for Lutherans. He's a Presbyterian. We have featured many of Mr. Powell's pieces on this series. This short piece was written to be an introduction for the hymn singing of this hymn by his congregation. The text of the next Ascension piece is found in number 492, On Christ's Ascension I Now Build. There seems to be some disagreement about who wrote this 3-stanza hymn, Perhaps Joshua Vigeland, who lived a short life from 1604 to 1640, was the author, and he's credited with writing it in our LSB hymnal. But since then, perhaps Ernst Sommermann, who lived from 1630 to 1670, was the actual author. Neither are famous hymn writers, and this is his or their only hymn in our hymnal. The hymn addresses the Christian hope of the resurrection when Christ will come to receive us to himself as he promised. While this hymn is not very familiar to congregations, it's a fine Ascension hymn. The text of the first verse, number 492, reads, "On Christ's ascension, I now build the hope of my ascension." This hope alone has always stilled all my doubts and apprehension. For where the head is, there as well I know the members are to dwell, when Christ will come and call them. What a splendid and hopeful text. The tune set for these set of words is a favorite old German tune, Nun freut euch. This tune is set to 4 different texts in our hymnal, the most famous being, "Dear Christians, one and all rejoice." The tune is by an unknown composer, but it could have been written by Martin Luther. It first appeared in a hymnal in 1524 in Wittenberg, where Luther was. I will play an arrangement by Martin Wilkman, who lived in the 1600s. He received his early musical training under the great Lutheran teacher and organist Heinrich Schütz. For the last 19 years of his life, he was the organist at St. James Church in Hamburg, Germany. He died while there and was supposedly buried in a grave under the church's organ. This is a mixed rhythm piece, like many pieces of that era that we've played recently. It's a combination of half, quarter, eighth, 16th, and whole notes. The arrangement of this tune is noteworthy because the melody is played completely in the pedals on the rather bold 4-foot Shalimar rank of pipes. While that is going on with my feet, my fingers are dancing around and playing the accompaniment on the grate or the bottom keyboard. Our next hymn is another setting of today, the Ascension hymn, Up Through Endless Ranks of Angels. This splendid 4-stanza Ascension hymn text was written by Jaroslav Vida. It was written at the request of the Augsburg Publishing Company. They asked Vida to write the text to be paired to a different hymn tune. The splendid Ascension text was the result. I've never heard it to another hymn tune. I don't know if it actually ever stuck together. The tune we have in our hymnal, Ascended Triumph, was written by Henry Garricky, a graduate of Concordia University in River Forest. After having sung this hymn tune to this text, I cannot imagine singing it to a different tune. This is perhaps Henry Garricky's most famous hymn tune. The hymn is now in 9 other denominational hymnals. It's amazing when a fine new hymn tune like this one is written by a living composer and has been arranged by many other composers, including David Sherwin and John Banke. In this case, I will be playing an arrangement by William Braun. It was written in the form of a trio. The melody is played on the swell or the top keyboard with my left hand. My feet and my right hand are playing the joyful accompaniment parts. Our next piece is This Joyful Eastertide. Paul will play an introduction and a fantasy on the Dutch hymn, perhaps one of the most famous Dutch hymns, This Joyful Eastertide, composed by Jan Bender. Jan Bender, who died in 1994, was born in the Netherlands, came to America for several teaching stints at various colleges, including Concordia Teachers College in Seward, Nebraska, where Paul went, Wittenberg University in Ohio, and Valparaiso University. Next, Paul will be ending our program today with the playing of a stunning arrangement of the Welsh tune, "Look Ye Saints, the Sight is Glorious." This piece was heard earlier today in an arrangement by Robert J. Powell. This time you'll hear an arrangement by master organist and teacher Paul Mons. It's a splendid version. We are happy you chose to view and listen to our 5th Easter music program, including some Ascension hymn tunes. We hope the tunes and stories have brought you some joy to your hearts and lifted your spirits. Next week, Paul and I will be playing a few more Easter pieces and some Pentecost pieces. As usual, if you have any suggestions or comments, or would like for Paul or me to play one of your favorite or seasonal pieces, please send me an email at broom.saint.johns@gmail.com or call and leave a message for me at 630-707-7655. We love to hear from our listeners and viewers, from folks like you. I want to thank my colleagues and friends, Rick Schultz and Mark Kornitz, for their splendid video work and their editing that they do each week. Their work is amazing. Also want to thank my colleague, Paul Frazee, for sharing the organ bench with me. We all four share together in presenting this program for your edification. We hope to see you in worship. Go in peace. Pray for peace, especially in the Middle East. Serve the Lord and others. Thanks be to God.